Now call to order the special meeting for the Planning Commission for today, Thursday, October 9th. If you would stand and say the pledge. Mr. Cherry, could you call roll?
Jim Wiseman, Melissa Weidenbach,
Here.
Brent Wright,
Here.
Carissa Childers, Sam Lavoy,
Here.
Deb Ekdahl,
Here.
Denise Little,
Here.
Victoria Vasquez,
Present.
Alonzo Garcia.
Here.
We appreciate your time, and this is a special meeting. I know you all have busy lives, and we do appreciate you being here.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We'll turn it over to you.
So I don't have an agenda in front of me. Is somebody, if I may? So at least I know. No, that's the redevelopment commission.
I thought you were going to give a presentation prior to calling any.
Yeah, so he is going to, but I think he would say he wanted to see where he was on the agenda.
I just wanted to see where we were at on the agenda. That's all.
I'm the same way.
So this evening, Madam President and members of the commission, so there's, in redevelopment planning, basically any time, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a precursor and then go into the residential housing development program process that we've initiated with the Redevelopment Commission. My name is Dan Bowditch. I'm the redevelopment director for the city's redevelopment commission. The Redevelopment Commission has initiated and has started the process and has this evening approved a declaratory resolution on residential housing development programs, specifically 5 programs in the city of Portage. Those projects are developer-driven. The developments are for River Trace, Bower Farm, Sandy Trail, Providence at Farmington, and Swanson Trails. All projects that have come before the Plan Commission. The preliminary plats have been approved, and I would ask Mr. Cherry to confirm they have been approved. All the primary plats have been approved by the Plan Commission for
Yes, they
those
have.
developments. So
Yes.
they've been approved. They've already been, each of the projects have already been vetted as far as through the Design Review Committee for public improvements to be made consistent with the neighborhoods and any impacts that you may have on the neighborhood from a planning perspective. Each of the projects, I verified with Ms. Dawkins that they are consistent with the comprehensive plan, and they are consistent with the zoning ordinance and the zoning district classifications that are designated for each of the projects. So with that being said, the redevelopment law provides for the redevelopment commission to establish residential housing development programs. What that does is allow for the redevelopment commission to supplement a residential developer's plan as a program to initiate a redevelopment process on vacant land or rehabilitation process for dwelling units to be constructed, whether they're single-family townhome unit, cottage development duplexes, or whether they're age-restricted dwelling units. Moving forward, the redevelopment commission determined that it would be in the interest of the redevelopment commission in the district to establish individual programs for each one of the planned developments, being River Trace, Bower Farm, Sandy Trail, Providence at Farmington, and Swanson Trails. And I apologize if I repeat. I'm going off the top of my head on this, but I've been working on it for several months now. So what we've done is prepared for each one of those a residential housing development program, which I believe have been provided to each of you. They are also available online. They have been for 30 days now. Part of the process, commissioners, is the redevelopment commission prepares those programs, which are consistent with the preliminary plats, the number of units that have been determined, the cost improvements, whether developer-driven or public improvements to be made, of infrastructure, right-of-way improvements, or landscape improvements are to be made. Basically, the redevelopment commission, through a redevelopment housing development program, has taken that information and prepared an economic development plan. The redevelopment statute, Indiana Code 36-7-14, requires that any residential housing development program approved be a part of a redevelopment project area. Redevelopment project areas are broken into three categories: redevelopment areas, which you're familiar with; economic development areas, which you should be familiar with; as well as urban renewal areas. Now, urban renewal areas are a category that were done in the 60s and mid-70s, a little bit through the early 80s, but they're really not done now. Urban renewal areas were total blocks, were demolished and rebuilt, replatted. We no longer do that. I've been in this business doing this for 30 years now, and I've never written an urban renewal plan. So they're not done very often. I don't know of any. The only one I know that has one, actually two communities. The city of Gary has one, and it was done in early 1970s, and the city of Hammond has one, and it was done in the late 60s. So you can see that very few communities do them. So part of the programming is the redevelopment commission this evening went through the process, had a 30-day, went through the process to prepare the residential housing development programs for each development. They provided a 30-day review period. It's been online and on our website, made available. We've also provided an overview of all the projects to show the totality of development of 1,206 units, which you should be aware of. You've approved all the plats. As well as the types of units that are being developed, including we also looked at the amount of potential private investment totaling about $481 million by the developers, and looked at how much that would entail as far as gross assessment and net assessment for taxing purposes. Because we really, as a redevelopment commission, our charge is to, and authority and role is to increase the assessed value of the community, to drive economic development. And economic development is more than just bringing in manufacturing, commercial, industrial, and other land units. It's about providing quality, market value homes for employees of those businesses. And when you look at the entire quality of life of any community, Just like real estate agents say location, 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 developers will look at a number of issues when site selecting. What is the housing condition and quality in the community? Is there varied levels of housing available for our employees? From initial worker starter working to leadership and executive level? Is there a labor force that is skilled enough to do the work that we are looking to bring to this community? And do you have the amenities and support amenities? For example, being on Lake Michigan, having a national park, having a downtown, having cultural events in your community, or being near cultural events. So the Redevelopment Commission determined that having a residential housing development program is in our best interest as the redevelopment district. The redevelopment district then took the next step this evening to approve an economic development area, to designate an economic development area, and approve an economic development plan for the residential housing development programs. For all intents and purposes, the residential housing development programs and the economic development plans are the same. When I drafted the programs, I drafted them textually so that the economic development statutory requirements under Section 41 of Indiana Redevelopment Law, IC 36-7-4, were consistent in the program, so that when the economic development plan was to be drafted, I can translate that information right over. So I can state that we do have a separate document called the Economic Development Plan for the blank economic development area for each 5. However, they are based upon and include, if not all, but more textual information from the programs. They're one and the same. The graphics are the same, the tables are the same, the schedules are the same, the costs are the same. The only real difference is one is a program, residential housing development program, and one is an economic development plan for the area.
And Dan, like you say, both of those are required as part of the statutory
Right,
to have
and those
this.
are required as part of the process. So this evening, the Redevelopment Commission passed 5 individual declaratory resolutions on each of the residential housing development programs. One for River Trace, one for Bauer Farm, one for Sandy Trail, one for Providence at Farmington, and one for Swanson Trails. Now, by statute, under Section 16, when the Redevelopment Commission approves a declaratory resolution declaring an area, redevelopment project area, and a redevelopment project plan, is required to go to the Plan Commission to ensure that that economic development plan is in conformance, in compliance with the official land use plan of the city, meaning the 2009 comprehensive plan that was prepared and approved, prepared by Short Elliott Hendrickson, and approved by the city's Common Council. In addition, we also looked at, and you need to make sure that it's in compliance with the zoning ordinance and the classified districts. We did that. It's in the program and it's in the economic development plan. The statute requires that you further approve the declaratory resolution as in compliance with the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance. So your charge tonight is to ensure through staff that each one of the declaratory resolutions, meaning the residential housing development program and the economic development plan more specifically, is in compliance with the plan. And of course it is, because you've already approved the plats and they've all come before you. So we've done this after the fact to make sure. It's more, in this case, an ministerial action for the purposes of getting it through the next process. And if approved this evening, it then goes to the city's Common Council, at which point they make the final determination that it is in compliance, because the Plan Commission is advisory to the city council.
Could I say, like I said before, like an extra, version of that? If these were being proposed by the Redevelopment Commission ahead of the Plan Commission approving the subdivisions, there would be the same check going on with the staff to see if it matches the zoning of the land and making sure that it matches the city's current comprehensive plan, which wouldn't change much because even when we update the plan, and I'm excited about that coming, I mean, these neighborhoods are, they're in the land zone for it. What he's saying is whether the plats for these subdivisions were approved by the current plan commission or back when I was on it or, what have you, the proof is it's already been approved. From an administrative standpoint, it's really clear that they meet those standards right now. But I think it's also important we go through so that you guys understand what this plan is, what the residential home development program is actually all about. So there's really two pieces here of this meeting as I see it. There's the official action of the Plan Commission confirming that these 5 subdivisions match the city's comprehensive plan and the zoning of the land they're on. And if they don't, well, then you guys all broke the law previously, and I know you didn't do that, But the second part is the spirit of transparency and to show what's been worked on by the Redevelopment Commission with the incredible assistance and leadership of our redevelopment director, Dan Bowditch, to do something innovative, to be able to account for the challenges that come with residential growth, which I know has been a concern for many people in our city, including members of the Plan Commission. I kind of ran for mayor and left the Plan Commission to try to solve that problem.
Right. So it's an administrative process, Commission President and members of the commission. Typically, my background is in land use planning, and my work is in development economic finance, which means I take your land use decisions and apply a financial perspective to that, which is why we go through and look at what's the potential investment, what is the net assessed value, what's the potential taxation that comes out of this, and work with communities in the Midwest to assist in their land use decisions and the financial impact. So this is one way that the city has been transparent and through its redevelopment commission to really look at what is the impact of these residential developments and how can it assist the city in addressing any legislative taxation issues or provide services in the future.
Dan, would you mind if I give kind of a history or at least the Austin Bonta version of the
You
story?
may.
Thank you. So in 2019, the Indiana legislature passed a law that allowed the creation of what I'm going to call residential allocation areas. Some people call them home TIFs, but I feel like that violates the principle of there's no such thing as a TIF district.
No, there's not.
So I'm going to call them residential allocation areas. But no matter what you call them, it took what was the premise of what I call a traditional allocation area, like what we currently have in the city along Route 20, the Ameriplex, and our downtown parts of 6, where we're able to collect the tax increment, or we're able to collect the revenue from the allocation area from commercial and industrial properties within the allocation area. Someone who lives on, I think it's Nielsen Street, is that the one that's behind the Ameriplex? I forget the exact, I think it's called Nealon Street. Someone who lives on Nealon lives within the current traditional allocation area, but none of their property tax or revenue from it passes through the allocation area to the redevelopment commission because it's a residential property that happens to be in the allocation area, not an industrial or a commercial. What happened in 2019 is the Indiana legislature first created residential allocation areas to be able to do some of the things that you do with a traditional allocation area, but for residential development. The clearest example of that would be, let's say that you have a city, and I sometimes jokingly call this hypothetical city Timbuktu, Indiana. It's a very far away, small town. I'd say Radiator Springs, but I might get sued by Pixar, so we'll call it Timbuktu, Indiana. And the mayor of Timbuktu, the city council, and the plan commission, redevelopment commission there, they know that they're down to like 25 people. And they know because everybody on a board is, it totals the whole residence, right? They know that they need residential growth or this town is going to fade away. Now, that's an extreme situation. There's all sorts of situations where a city or a town might want to incentivize residential growth. But in its purest form, it's a way to say to developers, we would like to incentivize the residential growth. Just as a traditional allocation area, you might do a deal with tax increment financing to incentivize industrial growth. You might have a factory get built, but you need a road to get there, so a bond is made. You pledge the increment from the property tax increase that's generated, or the value of it going up, of the investment. It turns around, it pays off that bond. That's traditional allocation areas. Same idea for a residential area. It's a very interesting idea. Come 2023, very few communities anywhere in Indiana had taken advantage of this. The reasons are debatable, but speaking for myself, I think there were two reasons why, for the most part, cities in Indiana were not utilizing residential allocation areas as a tool between 2019 and 2023. Not to pick on fictional Timbuktu, Indiana, but if you're too far away enough, if you just are a place that people aren't moving to, you can tell a developer, you could say to Brent Wright, hey, we'll offer you this deal to be able to make sure that the infrastructure is taken care of this way, but if you don't believe you can find buyers for the homes there, it doesn't matter if they're assisting you with paying off the bond. It's not going to incentivize you to come. Then you have cities like Portage and cities like Hobart and just cities throughout the region, but I'm partial to Portage. Portage has never needed to incentivize a developer to build a neighborhood in Portage. You come to Portage, you do your own financing to build the infrastructure, which you then dedicate to the city, and you will make a profit, or at least most developers are confident that they're going to make a profit building in Portage, even if that means putting in the infrastructure. So from our standpoint, it's always been, well, why would we feel the need to incentivize that if someone's going to do it anyway? That just doesn't make any sense. Unless there's like a developer you really like, but then you're getting into all sorts of other weird questions, right? Like, we do it for Brent, but we don't do it for somebody else. For the record, we haven't done it for Brent. Please don't put that in the paper. So, well, that'll be in the article. And then the mayor said, don't put this in the paper. No. So I say that because I think the state of Indiana, when they were looking at this law that they created and how it was going, they realized it wasn't really working, at least not the way intended. So they started and they made a change in 2023. They maintained the existence of residential allocation areas, but then they added, you can use the increment generated to pay for police and fire operations. And I believe the intention of that, it's hard to speak to every member of a legislator's intentions, but I believe the intention of that was to address another issue that communities in Indiana are dealing with, which is there's a lot of reasons to want residential growth, but there are challenges with residential growth because more people means potentially you need more police officers, you need more firefighters. Growth creates challenges, but it also creates great opportunities. And so I think that the reform of residential allocation areas, allowing the increment to also be used for police and firefighter revenue, was a way to help communities bring in growth and either embrace or welcome it as it's beneficial, but then have also revenue available to pay for that public safety part of it. When I heard about it, though, I first felt in 2024, when I started working with Mr. Bowditch on our idea for a residential development program, my first thought for Portage, given that we have always attracted developers who believe that they were going to build here and do well here in most circumstances, most versions of the economy, I thought we could create residential allocation areas on some of the areas that we know are prime for residential development. That'll allow us to capture that increment, and it might take us a while. So we would create it. My original plan was, let's create these areas. It might take 5 or so years for the neighborhoods to get built out, but then that revenue, which would come into the redevelopment commission, we would then get, these things last for 20 years. If it takes 5 years for a neighborhood to build out, that gives us 15 years of additional public safety revenue that we could put to use in our city in a smart way. And so I really liked this idea. We started working on this, but then in 2025, there was a very dramatic change. Our state legislature passed another law, I think I'm at 3 now in the story, and that's called SCA 1. And SCA 1 is a very dramatic shift in how cities are funded in Indiana. And Portage is one of many cities trying to figure out how to handle the revenue loss that we're going to receive in SCA 1, in particular in the upcoming 3 years, 2026, 2027, and 2028. There are opportunities the state gives to try to get some revenue back, but the toughest year to get through is 2028. And so knowing that with this plan, we were going to be waiting some time for revenue to come in, I went to Mr. Bowditch and asked him if he could do the impossible. Could he find a way for us to get more revenue in an innovative way? And that's when Mr. Bowditch created, which was created for Portage, but already there are other cities contacting him trying to learn more about it, the Tax Increment Revenue Imposed Fee, or TIRF. Now, I know we've got people of every political spectrum here on this meeting, but it's not a tariff like what you hear about on the news. It's a TIRF. And what that is, remember, I didn't intend to propose this as something where we were incentivizing the developer by pledging increment to a bond. Again, I just didn't see a particular need. We found an interesting way to look at it as we kept working on this, but what we found is we could approach the developers. I had one developer, it was kind of funny. We had told him what we were working on, and he's like, well, I guess that's okay, but I'd really like it if you guys could help, us out. I'm like, I'm sure you would, but we went back and we spent time meeting with the developers, and what we proposed is the ability to say, the Redevelopment Commission will pledge revenue, the increment from the neighborhood to the bond, or a part of the bond to pay off some of it. The developer is going to own the bond, right, Dan? The developer is going to own the bond. The Redevelopment Commission will pledge a percentage, and Dan can explain that better than I can, but a percentage of the revenue to pay off a percentage of the bond that saves the developer money. But as a cost for the privilege of getting this arrangement, we have the tariff, the imposed fee for it. And that imposed fee is paid to the city every year until either 6 years goes by, and Dan can explain why, or when the neighborhood is at a certain percentage built out. Dan, is it
80% of
80
the building permits are pulled.
And the reason why that matters is, oh, I'm sorry, you go ahead.
Building permits, right.
And that was something that we had to calculate and weigh because we looked at both ways, for it. Once a neighborhood is 80% built out, you now have people living in there, they're living and they're paying their taxes. And so now we're collecting enough increment that the tariff drops off, but now we're receiving 25% of the increment. Instead of waiting possibly 5 to 6 years to start getting a bigger chunk of money, but only for maybe a 15-year period, we estimate that this would bring in $600,000 to $650,000 every year, starting in year one, first by the tariff payments, and then as they phase out, the increment coming in. So not to say it's all perfect estimates, but between a total of $600,000 to $650,000 coming into for police and fire operations every year for the next 20 years. Now, an interesting thing about residential allocation areas as opposed to a traditional allocation area, I think I'm getting good at this, Dan, but correct me if I'm wrong. A traditional allocation area, the clock starts once you start the bond, or you start the project. A residential starts once you do the declaratory, which was today with the Redevelopment Commission. So once passed, the clock on these runs until October 9th, today's the 9th, right?
Yes.
October 9th, 2045. At which time then the allocation area, I use the term breaks, and then it goes back into the regular net assessed value of the taxing unit. Dan, I'm sorry if that was a little long-winded.
No, that's correct. That's a financial explanation of the reason for the Redevelopment Commission taking action. However, the action before you today is to determine whether it is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance.
And to put it simply, in a weird way, I'm coming almost like a developer would. I've got, I don't have Todd Leith with me, but if you know his famous phrase, your code says this is here. But I felt it was very transparent to explain why we're doing this, not just that it meets the code.
So does the city get 100% of the taxes basically once the bond's covered or paid?
Phone, please? Oh,
Sorry. Does the city basically collect around 100% of the taxes in these districts once it's completed?
so it's a really good question, and I'm going to try my best, but then I know Dan's going to make it better. But it might be better for me to say it as close to correct as I can, and then Dan will get it. One of the misconceptions about allocation areas is people think, well, and it's a misconception about how taxes work in Indiana, which even I had until I got into government. Common sense would tell you that if you've got a house, and let's say you're the first house built on your street, right? And I'm just making up a number. Let's say you're paying $5,000 in property taxes on your house. If somebody builds a house next door to you of equal value to your house, you're thinking, oh, well, the government's now getting double in taxes, right? It's not, because in Indiana, there's a levy growth quotient, and so there's a point where with enough growth, taxes go down. What an allocation area does is it takes the base tax rate, which is the tax rate in that area when it starts, or when it's activated. The base and anything below it stays in the existing, revenue where it goes. Past that, it collects it all, and then that all goes to the redevelopment commission. But that's why you'll see in what Dan has prepared, and I think you could get it back on the screen, the tax impact. It sounds odd because you might think, oh, well, we're making all this money. Wouldn't it just split by this percentage if we didn't do this? No, because actually taxes would, I'll give you an example, Brent, with our current traditional allocation area. I think there are people who think incorrectly, and I did once, maybe about 10 or even probably 5 years ago, I thought that assuming all bonds were paid off, which they're not, but if they were, there was a time where I thought that if the city abolished the allocation area, Ameriplex and Central just went back into the regular taxing units, I thought, oh, well, then the city will get more money, the schools will get more money, the township will get more money, but actually not. It would just bring, in most cases, the taxes on all the factories and the commercial properties down, and then we would get either the same we were getting or maybe a little more, and that's what you'll see in the chart here when it comes to the estimated tax impact on the units. You'll see that there is a tax levy impact on the county of Porter County, and that's a tax levy impact on Porter County, the city of Portage, and the Porter County Airport, which for the record is not the Valpo Airport, it's the Porter County Airport. I gotta be really clear on that. The schools and the township, they do not have a levy impact, but they have a circuit breaker impact, which means that if we took no action and these developed, there's money that could have been there. But that's why the Redevelopment Commission spent time meeting with the trustee and the school system to work out arrangements to make sure that money that we're able to either make flexible and available for them or grant them exceeds the circuit breaker loss, doesn't just make it whole, but exceeds the total circuit breaker loss, still brings in this new revenue for the Redevelopment Commission. Dan, I'm sure I got something off or could have said something better there.
You've explained it. It gets complicated as far as the taxation. I'd be more than happy to come back and go through the levy impacts and the cumulative fund impacts. But in general, by capturing assessed value, when you have a general fund, the levy is the levy. So the city's general fund, if the levy is $1 million, which it's not, you're still going to receive $1 million whether you have $1 billion of assessed certified net AV or 900 million. You're still going to get your $1 million. The only exception is, and we calculate this for the overlapping taxing units, the county, the library, the township, the city, the schools, and the Porter County Airport, is if there's a cumulative fund. They're special funds because they're not based upon the levy. The levy is based upon the rate. The rate is set by the state at a maximum. So, for example, a cum capital fund for bridges may be 5 cents per 100, and typically units go at 5 cents. So from a finance perspective, if you have more assessed value, you're going to receive more levy. If you have less assessed value, you have less levy. So we can quantify what that value is of a assumed loss. It's not a loss because you wouldn't have received it but for. the development happening, but we can show what that quote-unquote but-for loss would have been. And that's what we quantify for the units.
And I would add that, not to say this with too much like pride or anything, but in general, taxing units often make decisions that impact or cause a circuit breaker loss for the other taxing units. It's innovative in itself for the redevelopment commission to want to work with the township and the schools to offset the circuit breaker loss, rather than just saying, that's the way it goes, And we're happy to do that because we want everybody to make it through as best we can here. But to put it simply, there's no money that's being lost in the future that we're not making up for, and yet the tax system in Indiana means generating more revenue that otherwise wouldn't be there if it was just part of the overall AV.
That is correct. But again, this isn't a financial issue. We do
Right,
provide
this
that
is but we
information.
just want to be transparent what we're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, legally, this is consistent with the plan, and it's consistent with the zoning of these properties.
I have one question. That agreement, that bond agreement, or the thing you didn't want to call a tariff, but, okay.
Turf, yeah.
Is that with all 5 developers, or is there a specific developer?
So that's a great question. So we want to be able to offer it to all 5, and we've been in discussions with all 5, and no one is getting a unique deal. Mr. Bowditch can explain like the percentages and how we worked out what the tariff would be for each one based on the investment and what it generates. But it's not like, again, say you were building a neighborhood, Mr. LeBoy and Brent Wright was building, one. It's not like we would give him all of his money and you only a portion of yours. We have the same proportions, I think it would say, worked out with everybody.
Yes. So when we met with the developers between May and July to propose and discuss this option and scenario, a couple of the developers were adamant that they would support it if everybody was treated equally. So the intent of the redevelopment commission and the project development agreements that will be drafted is that each one of the developers will be responsible for a tax increment revenue imposed fee, or it could be an impact fee. They would be responsible for that TURF at 25% of the obligation that would be issued to service the debt for their public improvements, right-of-way, utility, landscaping, signage, any dedicated public investments that they make, we would incentivize that. So what we do is, real simply, we look at the gross assessed value and the net assessed value of the projects based upon the implementation of SEA 1 and the phasing into the projects. I don't mean to complicate this any more than it is, but the assessed value that's captured, that assessed value that is captured, there is a tax component to it, that those taxes paid on that captured assessed value become tax increment revenue, and we can cash flow that and pro forma it to determine what that is over the 20-year period. We then work to size a bond based upon pledging 100% of that tax increment towards the bond repayment with principal and interest. Further, what we do is part of the process is that in order to provide surety, a high level of surety and probability of payment, there's a debt service coverage ratio that is at 125%. So in theory, we're only pledging 75% to the repayment of the bond. That 25% stays with the redevelopment commission. So understanding that, so if it was $100,000 of tax increment, $75,000 would go is size the bond for a payment of principal and interest of $75,000 a year. That $25,000 stays with the redevelopment commission. Now multiply that by 5, it's $125,000. That would, the city redevelopment commission can then dedicate to public safety capital improvements, police, fire, ambulatory, or public safety operations.
Dan, would you mind putting the chart back real quick, the one that shows the developments and the estimated TURF payments?
Yes.
And
I
I
have to
believe
turn the
that-
screen back on, but
No
bear with me
problem.
here.
I can just kind of show some of that, because to put it simply, River Trace is going to be paying less than, say, Bower Farm or Sandy Trails, but because it's a smaller neighborhood, and so it's a smaller amount of bond that's, coming, and then that's where, but the amounts between them, yeah, I think if you, thank you. And if you go down, I think it's the last part.
What is it?
There we go.
Here we go.
So what you see is, you've got the developer, and you've got the planned development, and then you have the tariff estimate for each year. And so what you'll see is, based on different sizes of developments and the bond itself worked out, there's a different tariff that they're paying each year. What we imagine is that it's going to take some time to build the neighborhood out, and the way we have it is that this is set until they're at 80% build out or 6 years in. And that makes sense that, you don't want to just keep paying forever for 20 years if there's other factors. You have to be able to compromise there. So what you see, though, is that we expect it to be about 622. That's like the estimate we put there, but it can be higher, it can be lower once these all are finalized. But that would go for 26, 27, 28, and 29. But then once they start getting to build out, you start to see it drop, and you see it drop. And then what'll happen by 2031, and once you get into 32, they won't be paying the tariffs anymore. But that's when the redevelopment commission will be receiving 25% of the increment revenue. And so essentially, you're trading in $600-some thousand for the first couple years to $600-some thousand coming in preceding years, but through the tax increment coming in. But yeah, so it's not that one developer is getting a better deal. There are some places where they will give a developer 100% of the tax increment, which I just don't see that being beneficial in a city like ours, when our big thing is we need to be able to account for public safety needs that come from residential growth. Again, maybe there are some towns that need to do the 100% because they need growth that bad. I'm not trying to judge anybody. But in Portage, we think that this is a responsible way to have public safety money coming in. I also will say, I know that the tariff word can bother some, but originally the plan was, just to tell you some humor, the original idea was to call it a PILATI, a payment in lieu of tax increment, but the problem is it's not really in lieu, so we had to change it around.
Change it around. Legal said we had to change it.
PILATI is a little bit more catchy, though.
Yeah. So each developer is treated exactly the same. The general premise is that what I did was I took that 25% once it's fully assessed and tax increment is generated fully and then pledged. That 25% from years, say, 3 to 20, I averaged that and said that's how much you're going to pay every year until your 80% building permits are pulled. Or if you don't pull them in your phasing in period, plus 2 years. So for example, you can see Altoff Homes has a 4-year phase-in period that they've identified. So they would be responsible for up to 6 years of paying that 25% average to the city. After 6 years, they should be built out. If they're not, market influences have it. But at this point, we've gotten the upfront money. It's a way to extract the upfront money for public safety services, fire, police, and ambulatory, in order to cover any shortfalls due to Senate Enrollment Act number 1 that was approved in May. It's creative, but at the same time, it's no different than what any other community is doing. In fact, I've received calls from Michigan City, Hobart, as well as other communities to instill this similar type platform.
And I think that concerns about, you could always be concerned about a neighborhood build-out taking a long time, but that's true of any neighborhood that comes, whether there's a deal like this in place or not. In a deal like this, there's at least 6 years going on where the city is getting direct payments for public safety as opposed to waiting and not receiving. But I also think that's why it's a very important piece, Dan, that the developer is the one who owns the bond, correct?
Correct. They have been required to buy the bond. So they're taking their own investment liquidity and placing it towards the improvements.
Which is definitely a motivator to make sure that the neighborhood sells as quick as possible. And Dan, if you mind going to the estimates on the school funding on the federal and state side, I just want to speak to a secondary spot. So we ran the numbers with the assistance of Portage Township Schools on what we would estimate for each neighborhood to be bringing in terms of children. One of the biggest misconceptions that I think is starting to turn around is there's been a perception in our community in time that the Portage Township Schools are overflowing with students. In actuality, Portage Township Schools is decreasing in students each year. That's not just a Portage issue, that's an issue all over the region. Even with residential growth we've had, it's not necessarily all young families bringing children. But these neighborhoods, we believe, bring in a certain amount of students, and then with students come the federal and state funding per student for the school. Now, you might say, well, if these neighborhoods get built, the schools are going to get that funding either way. And that's true if the neighborhoods are built, but also we want them to be built steadily enough that the schools are able to bring in students as they get built. So a secondary effect of this is it motivates so that there aren't delays from the developer's side in getting the neighborhood built out and sold. Not that any developer's, lazy about it, but just it creates that added incentive on the city side.
Just getting back to my question. Okay.
Okay, want to
Sorry,
make sure we
yeah.
answer your questions.
We went around and around. I understand what you're saying and how each development is different size. It's gonna bring in a different amount of revenue. What my question was, as of now, as of today, which one or all are these, different neighborhoods buying into that idea?
So it's you'll see it at the bottom spot there, but it's Sandy Trails, which is a neighborhood that's being built by Loudon. And then you've got Bauer Farm, which is also Loudon. You've got Providence Real Estate, which is doing Providence at Farmington. And then you have Lennar Homes doing Swanson Trails. And then, I'm sorry, I missed somebody. Olthoff doing River Trace.
So all of them have accepted that
Yes.
turf?
Yes.
So
They're all in it?
They are all in, and they have been, well, let me try it this way. They have been all in with meeting with us, working on these. Everyone's excited about it because, to put it really simply, all builders, including them, have been trying for, when I say that there hasn't been a lot of residential allocation areas being made in Indiana, it's not for lack of trying on the builders' standpoint. The builders have been aware that this is around, and they have been trying to find ways to get cities in northwest Indiana to do something like this. They were initially all excited a year ago when I said we were doing it in Portage, and then they got less excited when I found out we weren't planning on giving them any increment.
Right.
Then SCA 1 happened, and we came up with the tariff, Pilati, whatever you want to call it. We came back and said, so good news, we are potentially going to be the first city, minus St. John, to do a deal like this, but we would like it to be in exchange for an imposed fee that still saves you money and still incentivizes the development, and everyone was interested in that. And I will say that there's appreciation now that other cities are looking at this deal too. I think that a lot of builders appreciate the fact that we have found a way to make an allocation area work in Indiana. Somebody clapping? I thought somebody was clapping. I was like, sorry, that was just a click. It's not that great. No, but to put that simply, it's very important to us in Portage that what we do for the RDC in making deals like this is that it's the same proportional deal for everyone, because we don't want any concerns about why is Brent getting this percentage, why is Sam getting this percentage, Victoria's got, this, and then we don't do anything for Denise. That's an issue. It needs to be the case that what we always propose is a standard deal for everybody.
So to answer your question, yes, every developer has agreed that they would pursue this platform. Yes, sir.
Hypothetically, right, so this is on a 6-year phase out, basically estimating that every community is gonna be built out at 80% occupancy by the 6th year, right? If it's built at 80% year 2, they're done paying in because now they're collecting through the redevelopment, right?
Bingo. So it incentivizes them to build out and pull permits faster.
Is it better for the city to do it in that direction? or is it better for the city to collect on a per permit basis with the average broken up over that many units per the development? And then that way it could possibly go longer if the development takes longer than 6 years.
Each one of the developers was adamant that they would agree to no more than 2 years after their phase-in, because they need the surety going back to their financial institutions that they wouldn't be paying a tariff in perpetuity.
Part of the reason that this took, I don't want to say so long, but why it took time is they had to go to financial institutions, and we had to talk to financial
Right.
institutions because, again, not trying to be too excited, but we invented something. You know,
And-
the banks, the financial institutions, they had to really study this proposal. They had to check any, issues with it. And some of the things we did, even the difference between occupancy versus building permits, had to do with making sure it was something that the builders, as well as the financial institutions that would be backing this, are comfortable with.
Right,
Yeah.
because typically, we've done our due diligence and worked through legal, as well as bond counsel, and with financial institutions, and identified that once the building permit is pulled, typically, the builder has a contract with that potential owner of the single family or the dwelling unit, and that cost is then placed upon the owner of the property. So there's a high probability that once a building permit is pulled, except for the first or 2 or 3, because they might build the starter ones, just to show. But the indication was that the building permit was a better route to go because we get the money faster. If we wait for the occupancy permit, we may have to wait another year for that to happen.
I was referring to the building permit, right? So like, say it's a 300 home subdivision and they pull 30 permits year one,
Right.
right? So then mathematically, to get to the 80%, would it be better that, okay, you're gonna pay on a per permit basis, for the year
Oh, I see what you
versus okay, for the whole neighborhood, and we're gonna estimate it to be done in 5.5 years or 6 years to get to the 80%.
I got
If you're
you.
at 50%, now the city's still gonna collect because it's on a per
So
unit
that-
basis versus a community.
So not to encourage anyone to go all like crazy, for it, but let's say a neighborhood gets 100% built out in 2 years. They might only pay the turf then in either the first year, the second year, depending on when they hit that 80%, build out. But even if they hit the 80% build out in 2 years, we're gonna be then getting the increment revenue. So it's not that we lose money if they build out faster, as long as they build out,
It's,
Well, I plan for the best, right? But,
Right.
or I plan for the worst, hope for the best. So I'm looking at a 10-year scope, because I always look at everything over 10 years that I do.
Right.
Right? So if it takes 10 years, then there's 4 years of non-payment for the 80%.
right.
Is what I'm getting at. So a per unit basis would cover that over the entire span until they hit the 80%.
Right.
I was just asking if that
Getcha.
would be better for the city overall, and would that be, because it basically would come down to the same dollar amount to the developer to get to the 80% regardless of when they do. If they get there sooner, then obviously it's gone, but.
Getcha. I think the way to see it is, if everything was clear and we were just going strictly by the city, there's probably all sorts of deals we could do. I'm very confident with what we've got put together as far as what ended up working on the developer, the financial institution side, and the city side of it. I see your point on the city side, but I think that this is the overall way that we know that we can kind of get this one through. The deals themselves, and I asked this at the redevelopment commission meeting, in terms of making sure that they're prepared, next step after this is it's going to go to the city council. Then if the city council passes it, then it goes back to the redevelopment commission at a meeting at November 6th. Our goal is to have the agreements made also by November 6th, because they can be approved simultaneously. So you can link the agreement to the final approval of the allocation area.
Right.
Yeah, and I would add that even creating the allocation area still brings in more revenue to the city that we can use for public safety in the long run. But given the circumstances, the Turf deal is a way that actually ensures the city has revenue we need to get through the next 3 years in a really productive way.
And I appreciate your question, because if I understand your question correctly, it's how do we apply the formula to get the same amount of money? I just tried to keep it simple for the developers, but I could see your point. We'll look at that. We'll look at that.
I know that we spent a lot of time talking about a lot more than whether or not this meets, the zoning of the land and whether or not it's consistent with the 2009 plan. But I appreciate it because, one, I trust that you guys are going to follow the law. But I think that to understand, too, what's happening, it also gives everybody who's following these public meetings the transparency of what we're working on. Because it is new, and there's a lot of misconceptions about allocation areas and tax increment financing as it is. So being able to be at the same meetings, answering the same questions in a clear way, and I believe you could almost watch word for word what Dan has said and I've said, and you see that it continues to add up,
And it's our intent as the redevelopment department to work with the Plan Commission on issues such as this, because we're working for the same goal. You're working from a new development and rehabilitation side, and we're working from the economic development side. And we need to merge together and keep each other informed. And I do meet with Department Head Cherry as well as Dina and the other staff on what's going on, so that, and Sandy McDaniel, on projects, so that we can all move in the same direction. And if the city has needs that the redevelopment commission can assist with, we will do that. And if the city can do things that the redevelopment commission can't, I'm sure that the city will work with us. So it is hand in hand. And this is the first time I've come before you, but it is, one thing we did want to do is make sure that you've seen me and you know that we want to work with you and answer any questions you may have.
If I could just tell a quick story. Not too long ago, but maybe some time ago, I had a breakfast or a lunch with State Senator, Rodney Pohl Jr., and we're talking about just the kind of things that a mayor and a state senator would catch up on to make sure we're on the same page. And somehow the question got asked kind of along the lines of, who do you guys, have doing this, doing that? And I'm like, well, have you heard of Dan Bowditch? And he's like, yes. He's like, that's like the best there is around. And I'm like, yeah, he is. And then he was saying, well, we're explaining what we're working on here. And he's like, who's been your, legal check for that? I'm like, well, we got Tom Pittman. He's like, Tom Pittman? I'm like, I know. I'm very excited about the team that we have doing the review on this, both on the financial side with Dan and the legal side with our bond counsel and our DC attorney, Tom Pittman, to review this on the bond side. We also have the same fantastic legal mind that you guys do with Scott McClure when it comes to getting these things approved in accordance with state law.
Right. And there'll be more projects coming before you, just so you know. Not just residential, but there may be additional residential. But there will be additional commercial, manufacturing, and industrial warehousing projects. In economic development, redevelopment, we are busy. Developers know that Portage is open for economic development and willing to work with developers on complex negotiations and discussions of how to make the project work.
Is there a way to blanket this throughout the city and zoning ordinances and things like with the new comprehensive plan?
It all ties together because here's the trick, right? It was so funny. So a good friend of mine, she had her father passed away some time ago, and she found and got together all of the newspapers that he saved of the Post-Tribune, Porter County edition from the 50s and 60s, and brought them over. And I'm going to start, I almost said translating, taking them and typing them and getting them out, to the community. It's amazing when you think about that in, 1959, when the city of Portage was started, you actually read about what people were saying, the kind of city that they were trying to create. And I'm like, I want to live at the place. And what's weird is that some of the people, now a lot of people who were here in 1959, fortunately are here today, and that's good. But the idea that if you could take people in 1959 when they're having these meetings talking about what they want the city to be, when they talked about, this is a real quote, about making Route 20 the Times Square of Northwest Indiana. That was an actual thing they were aspiring to. I think that if you could go back and take people in 1959, 60, 61 to Portage now, I don't think that they would be disappointed in so much in the city, but I think that there would be an idea of, oh, we had a lot of ideas that either didn't work out or haven't worked out yet. Portage was always designed to be a really successful city that people want to move to, want to live to. That doesn't mean an overcrowded city. That doesn't mean a city where traffic is a giant headache, and it doesn't mean a city that's unsafe. But I think that we have to figure out what kind of city do we want to be, how do we pay for it, and how do we set up our infrastructure and everything to be able to get there. What I really like about this is that even before SCA 1, Indiana's tax system created serious issues of, on one hand, residential growth is good for the economy in certain ways and really good for the school system in certain ways. But it also creates huge challenges for public safety and infrastructure. And those are some big gaps to close. In particular, it's something that the school superintendent and I talk about quite a bit, how what do you do when you have a system that incentivizes one unit to move one direction and another? But what I think that this really shows is that we've got the ability to bridge some of that gap and figure out how to have a safe, growing city. How to have a city. The traffic thing is something we're still working on, but that's a little bit beyond the scope of this deal. But I'm really excited about what we're working on there too.
And in addition, I don't want to belay the action that's necessary, but the redevelopment commission is looking and considering cost allocating a portion of the comprehensive plan update from the redevelopment commission funds. And so in working with the plan commission and the redevelopment commission, because what the plan will do is impact the allocation area. That will increase assessed value, will increase development and economic development, along with those areas outside. So in working tandem and together, hand in hand again, on that comprehensive plan, which in my background is in land use planning. So really the vision and the foresight for what it could be in the next 5, 10, 15 years. I hesitate to go beyond 15 because technology changes so quickly.
We'll have an AI mayor by then.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm kidding.
But in looking at it from that perspective, where do we want to be in 5, 10, and 15 years? And then have that land use plan that financially meets the necessary infrastructure, annexation, and growth. And then how do we have a plan and a zoning ordinance that complements that? So it's more dynamic than just saying a master plan. It's how do we get to that end product? Yeah, and we are here to work with you.
I think we're starting to finally, again, it's not just about bridging a gap between issues in the city, but bridging gaps between the city and the school, the township, but also just the RDC and the Plan Commission, so that we're not all competing with each other. We're actually building a vision.
Right. And we were very diligent and very forthcoming with the school system, as well as met with the township trustee as far as any impacts or anybody that was willing to speak with us. As far as, and you can even see on our analysis when we met with the school system, we went through and identified the potential population. At build-out, we're looking at potentially another 3,000 people in the city of Portage, which will now move you into even a larger capacity and a larger priority in Porter County. But also looking at the student enrollment, it's a potential for 600 new students for the school. And when they're financially dependent upon state and federal funding formula, we went through and determined that it's almost $5.7 million of additional funds. And then asking the question, do you have the capacity for 600 new students? Because we don't want to put them in a position where they don't have the capacity. So working together to make sure we have all the infrastructure, whether it's education, workforce, housing, commercial, retail, office, and cultural amenities, so that we can have a quality of life in the community that we're all working together.
And that's where, and I consider this a positive shift because, in 2018, there were 8,200 students in the Portage schools. Now it's at 6,588. So the school system, and again, that's an issue everywhere, but you see the sharpness of it. What I love about what the school system is doing right now, one, they are embracing this because if it brings in students, it's hard to know exactly what a capacity is for a school system because, speaking as a former teacher, you can always turn a somewhat big closet into a classroom and put Mr. Bonta in there with some of his kids, and it really looks like a classroom. But roughly in the current situation, about 9,300 seems to be a pretty good estimation of what our current capacity is. But with the changes they're already making, and speaking as an educator, at least by background, I'm very excited about the changes they're doing with Willow Creek Middle School. I know a lot of us are going to be sad to see Aylesworth go, but so much as we restructure so that individual schools that might have overcrowding or issues are spread out better. But then the transition to the intermediate system, so having it where every elementary school would go up to 4th grade, and then no matter where you are, whether you're in Ogden Dunes, South Haven, Portage, any unincorporated spot, you'll have all the 5th and 6th graders going to the new intermediate school, which would be Fagley, and then 7th and 8th grade be Willow Creek, then the high school. That's amazing in terms of student attention, like getting the teachers better focus on the students. We got great teachers working hard already, but that's really helpful. You also have a much better, I think, growing up dynamic. Not to say you can't ever have a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old in the same building, but it's a lot better developmentally, if you will, having the intermediate and then the middle school, you know? They're moving in a great vision right now, and I think the city is too, and again, we're coming together, and I think that that's really neat to see happen in Portage. All that said and done, I do think this matches the comp plan and the zoning.
Yes, and staff is here to make that confirmation. Yes.
Almost every other city in the world, we would start with that, but this is Portage, you know? Because you remember that quote, because in every other state, it's just basketball, but this is Indiana? You know, because in every other city, it's just a zoning review, but this is Portage.
All right, so we're going to go one by one.
We need a
Question.
Yes.
Victoria is asking if you should read the first one.
microphone, please, sorry.
I'm sorry. Read the first one and then refer to that with each one.
That's what the redevelopment commission basically did.
Okay.
Yeah.
But also, oh. Read like the title, like motion to approve resolution, something, something, yeah. And then
You could do as said, or as stated, whatever you guys do.
you could say like, first up is this, and we recommend this, and then someone can say so moved, and then someone,
I've got to say particular verbiage for each one.
got it.
I got a stupid question.
No such thing.
Okay. Many times when we're here on this board, we approve items, changes in the comprehensive plan through zoning changes. And a lot of times there's contingencies that are set to be completed at a later time. When these are all completed, we don't usually see those things in completion unless we go to the neighborhood and see it beginning, so we know, oh, everything must be intact. Now, I'm gonna ask a question, and the question is, with all these properties from your office, are these all completed as far as the contingencies and the issues that were
So
set
by-
aside, just
so-
so that we can say?
So I know
yeah,
what your question is. By law, they can't move dirt till the contingencies are done. So Dina does a great job at checking those boxes. So even NDOT approvals and IDEM approvals, all of that. So yes, the answer is yes.
So all these properties have been taken care of properly, so we could put our stamp of approval over them all.
Not stupid at all. It's great that we're doing it that way.
No, it's not, because it kind of ends there where you guys are and you're trusting staff. But we need to do that, and Dina keeps track of each of those.
I'll say nobody does it better
contingencies.
than Dina. I mean, she's great at it. And I know because people try calling me to complain about it, and I say, no, she's doing exactly what her job is. Never supersede you. If I could add to, Tom, I know at the RDC, we all learned how to pronounce Scrivener. I'm not sure if any of these still have any Scrivener errors between the last meeting and this one, but you might want to add just the, I don't know if that's necessary, though, because they're just voting on if it, you think so, Dan?
There is a Scrivener error because the resolutions that the declaratory by the redevelopment commission, the individual resolution numbers, I had incorrectly identified them as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, similar to yours. However, we are on resolution number 8. So your resolutions will be modified to the associated developer project to coincide with our resolution, number 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And I've updated yours already, and I just need to get those over to Dina so that they can be printed out, checked one last time before signature.
All right, I think Tom can read the first case number and then the first proposed motion, and then we can kind of sort through that to see if that we're all on the same page for the motion.
So for the first one, staff would recommend a motion to approve declaratory resolution with Scrivener error corrected. We had a long conversation about that.
Yes.
Of M-04-25, River Trace, finds the plan conforms to the city's zoning and comprehensive plan.
Yes.
So if you'd like, you could say so moved, and then someone could second.
So
it.
moved.
Second.
Mr. Cherry, could you call roll?
Melissa Weidenbach,
Yes.
Brent Wright,
Yes.
Sam LaBoy,
Yes.
Deb Ekdahl,
Yes.
Denise Little,
Yes.
Victoria Vasquez,
Yes.
Alonso Garcia.
Yes.
Next on the list, staff would recommend a motion to approve declaratory resolution with Scrivener errors corrected of M-05-25, Providence at Farmington, and finds the plan conforms to the city's zoning and comprehensive.
So moved.
Second. Or do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Cherry, if you could call roll.
Melissa Weidenbach,
Yes.
Brent Wright,
Yes.
Sam LaBoy,
Yes.
Deb Ekdahl,
Yes.
Denise Little,
Yes.
Victoria Vasquez,
Yes.
Alonso Garcia.
Yes.
Number 3, staff would recommend a motion to approve declaratory resolution with Scrivener errors corrected of M-06-25 Bauer Farm, and finds the plan conforms to the city's zoning and comprehensive plan.
So moved.
Second. I need a second.
Second.
Mr. Cherry, could you call roll?
Melissa Weidenbach,
Yes.
Brent Wright,
Yes.
Sam LaBoy,
Yes.
Deb Ekdahl,
Yes.
Denise Little,
Yes.
Victoria Vasquez,
Yes.
Alonso Garcia.
Yes.
Fourth is staff would recommend a motion to approve declaratory resolution with Scrivener's errors corrected and finds the plan conforms to the city's zoning and comprehensive plan for M-07-25 Sandy Trails.
So moved.
Do I have
Second.
a second?
Second.
Mr. Cherry, could you call roll?
Melissa Weidenbach,
Yes.
Brent Wright,
Yes.
Sam LaBoy,
Yes.
Deb Ekdahl,
Yes.
Denise Little,
Yes.
Victoria Vasquez,
Yes.
Alonso Garcia.
Yes.
Last on the agenda, staff will recommend a motion to approve declaratory resolution with Scrivener's errors corrected for M-08-25 and finds the plan conforms to the city's zoning and comprehensive plan.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Cherry, call roll. Brent made the second.
Melissa Weidenbach,
Yes.
Brent Wright,
Yes.
Sam LeBoy,
Yes.
Deb Ekdahl,
Yes.
Denise Little,
Yes.
Victoria Vasquez,
Yes.
Alonso Garcia.
Yes.
And again, thank you for everybody coming tonight.
Congratulations on a great job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And just for the, I don't want to keep you any longer than necessary, the Cubs are playing tonight, and I don't know what the score is, but. Oh, they start at 8, so we need to get out of here by 8. So the resolution as approved will be sent over to the plan commissions, will be sent to the clerk treasurer for consideration by the city's common council to approve your action, consider your action. At that point, assuming approval, it will come back to the redevelopment commission, and we will hold a public hearing and a special meeting on November 6th. So there's more opportunity for public input on the residential housing development programs. And once that is completed, assuming it is, confirming, we will be working with the individual developers on the obligations. And at that point, we'll have the project development agreements in place for redevelopment commission consideration as well as city council approval. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Look forward to working with you on other projects, but especially the comprehensive plan. We're looking to initiate that, if not this year, late, but potentially early next year. And that'll be a big undertaking. So
We
look for. Oh,
This is
you are
huge.
welcome.
This is huge.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So thank you very much to each one of you for coming on a special meeting night. We appreciate it.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn, a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
It was great to be up here with you guys again.